Good day. A brand new week is here. Festivus is upon us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Where did you get that?
Behold. So I've got this Festivus t-shirt. Can I lean in? Can you read
the
whole
Feats
thing?
of Strength champion?
Festivus for the rest of us.
Self-proclaimed.
I was sitting there yesterday on the couch watching football in the afternoon, and my wife goes, "Oh, I've got to give you one of your Christmas presents early." And I'm like, "What? Like, why? Like, it's not even Christmas Eve, like not even." So she goes, "Here." Goes to the tree, gives me the package, open it up. It's a Festivus t-shirt. And I said, "Have you been listening to the show? Did you know that Vince and I are doing a Festivus show tomorrow?" She's like, "What?"
Well, okay. That sounds right.
Here it is, though.
Oh, that's
a
fantastic.
Festivus for the rest of us. An official Festivus t-shirt. Happy Festivus to those who celebrate. That's right.
Spent most of the day trying to explain it to my family. And
they're like, "What?"
My son got very excited about the potential feats of strength from head of household. Yeah, very excited. Almost a little too excited.
We won't have feats of strength, but in rapid fire, it will be an all airing of grievances rapid fire. Most of it sports related.
Well,
we haven't discussed, I gave Vince kind of a list of mine. So
yes.
I don't know. I have no idea what Vince is going to come in with. I do wish I had a poll. I do wish Vince asked me if I had a poll before we were starting, but
yeah, I don't have,
no poll.
I kind of looked around today. I don't really, I think we need to invest in a metal poll for next year.
I think you're right. But we will have the airing of grievances in rapid fire. And I'll just say Curt Cignetti will make an appearance. College football, the predominant college football playoff talk.
Yeah.
We'll be part of that as well. So I think we're going to have plenty. I've got a surprise one for you as well.
Ooh,
so
I love surprises.
We'll be doing that.
You're all about surprises today.
I know.
I like it. I dig it.
It's Festivus, baby. It's Festivus.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Malachi Fields, Virginia wide receiver, committing to Notre Dame via the transfer portal. And Brian told me to let everyone know 8:00 tonight, live show. They'll be breaking down that commitment. So
nice.
There you go.
Very good.
I'm going to say I appreciated the Alabama Jones.
I know,
thing.
Right?
Like, of course, we didn't get to see it live, but we saw the social media and everything afterwards. The Alabama Jones by Shane Gillis to Nick Saban. That was right up there.
And he doubled down the next day on game day as well with the hat. I mean, he went with the hat 2 days in a row, regardless of the Alabama Jones comment, which I did enjoy that. I don't know how that does anything for like heat, though.
I know.
You know what I mean? I think it was more of a fashion statement than anything else.
By the way, did you see our least favorite national talk show host was at the Notre Dame game this weekend? There were a few celebrities
really
in town.
I did not see
I actually, and I told you, I crossed paths with Mark Cuban in the press box at halftime the other night. We walked right by each other, and then someone asked him for a selfie kind of in that hallway, that leads to the restrooms down, we're in the radio booths and stuff down there.
Yep.
So that's kind of right where we were crossing. And I was like, "Oh, Mark Cuban, not as big as I thought he would be." I thought he was, like, looking at him on TV, he looks like, to me, like he's at least 6 feet tall. I felt like 5'9", 5'10" tops.
Well, it's always hard. I always see
more slender than I thought as well, because he kind of has a big chest, it seems like, on TV. But
I always see him next to NBA players. You know what I mean? So it's like it's hard to judge how tall somebody is when they're hanging out with really tall people all the time.
Colin Cowherd was at the game.
Was he in the press box?
He was not in the press box. I saw this, I think it was on Instagram, on his Instagram. if you check out Colin Cowherd's Instagram, I think he was watching, there's apparently there's like a club inside, where the video screen, the giant video screen.
Really?
There's a club behind there, I believe.
It's behind and under kind of. Yeah.
But it's the video that he had. It's like you're sitting in these stadium seats and it's literally this massive screen in front of you. And it was like they showed Jeremiah Love's touchdown run. And it was like these people were sitting, like field level at the end zone. Like that's the view.
That's in LA. That's not at Notre Dame.
Really?
Yeah. It's this immersive restaurant. Because he's been there multiple times.
Okay.
For other events.
Did not know that. I just assumed it was because somebody said he was there. So I thought, that's what it was.
Yeah, that particular thing is like this. He's been there for NFL games too.
Okay.
And it's this immersive thing. You sit there and you're eating, and it's like a stadium seating situation.
Right.
The screen is all around you, and it makes it feel like you're sitting right there.
Yeah. In one of the videos, it looked like he was like looking out onto the field. So I guess
it's
I've
a
not been
wild
involved in any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a wild kind of restaurant.
3D bar in Los Angeles. Okay. All right. Well, never mind. Cowherd wasn't here.
He doesn't need to be.
Kyle Schwarber was, though. Did you see any of the pictures of Kyle Schwarber out tailgating with a lot of different fans?
I did not.
Yeah.
Schwarber
was there. Mark Cuban was there.
All the IU alum, the big IU alum people, Cuban, Schwarber, Dan Dakich or whatever his name is. He was very bitter.
Was he there?
He was there. Yeah, he posted a video afterwards. And
Dakich tears. That's
well,
nice.
And his prediction prior was hilarious. I mean, he just thought that IU was going to wipe the floor with Notre Dame and this whole thing, and then he took offense to anybody
anyone who took offense to him being stupid.
Yeah, he was telling everybody to suck it and
of course
and everything else. Like it was a video he took from his car.
He's such a good loser. He's
he's
very congenial just all the way around. Yeah.
It's just funny to me, and we'll get to the grievances part of things, but IU fans are going to be involved.
Yeah, like don't lose your ammunition too soon. We're not doing it. We're not doing grievances right now. We're saving that for rapid fire.
I feel like I
still
pretty much, operate in the land of grievances 365 days a year, but
it's a good call. It's a good call. I feel like I don't know about you, like, are we finally, like, as a, Notre Dame nation, whatever, like, are we finally past BK PTSD? Like, did this move us past that Friday night?
Not for me. No, not for me.
So you're still BK PTSD is what you're
saying.
Yeah. Like any loss is just going to, like, end of the world type. We're never going to win a big game. Like,
I mean, I don't think like that.
I guess it depends on what your definition of BK PTSD is.
Yeah.
But, like, to me, this definitely, because I saw some people asking this, like, this like this Notre Dame has finally won a big game that matters. Like going back to that 93 Cotton Bowl, right? Like, that's done now. I don't care if it was in their stadium. This was like, if there was not a college football playoff this year, like that was a New Year's Six bowl, right? Like that's the kind of matchup.
That's what you're saying, or that's what other people are saying?
No, I'm saying.
Oh, you're saying that.
I'm saying it was. Like, do you disagree with that?
I very much disagree with that. Yeah.
So it doesn't count to you.
I didn't say it doesn't count, but it doesn't count as like the bowl skid. The New Year's Six bowl skid, it doesn't count for me.
It's a playoff game, Vince.
Okay.
Like, it literally would have been in one of those bowl games.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't. You got to have the game at your own place. That nullifies the whole thing.
So it has to literally be in a bowl. The fact that it's part of the college football playoff.
Because there's more to it. There's more to traveling to a bowl game, being at a neutral site, having to deal with all that crap. There's more to it when you go on the road and you have to do that.
So you're just going to keep moving the goalposts.
I'm not moving the goalposts. Go back and look at before the season even started. I said they have to win at least 2 games to get that monkey off their back, and I'm sticking with it.
Nah, I disaspay.
That's fine.
I obviously wholeheartedly because these are 2 top 10 teams playing.
That's great,
regardless of where they were in the playoff. Part of the deal is because Notre Dame couldn't get a bye.
I
You
get
get
it.
to host that game. That's part of the deal. So
Doesn't do it for me.
I think
need
they've
one
got it
more.
off the schneid. I think they're off the schneid. It is
I-
done. It is over. That is history.
Talk to me on January 2nd, and I'll let you know. I'm not there. Sorry. It's not a New Year's Six bowl game. It's
This
not.
is part of your charm, Vince. This is part of your charm.
Hey,
I mean, you
listen.
basically just said it right before I asked you this, because you're in a perpetual state of grump.
Yeah, well,
which is why it's good that Festivus is here, so you can grump about some
it
stuff.
is good, but I'm sorry. I that's where I'm at. I said it before the season started. I'm sticking with it. I mean, yeah, they can't host, or they can't get a bye. We know this. It's a playoff game. It's a big game. I get it. Great. I don't know, man. It just doesn't do it for me. I need them to go to an actual bowl game and win the game. They haven't done that since '93.
But they just beat a top 10 team in a game that mattered. Like, does it have to be a bowl game? Is one, because again, it's one of the steps that you have to take as Notre Dame. Like, best case scenario as Notre Dame, you're going to be hosting one of these games every year. And obviously it matters because to get out of that round and into the round they're into now, you have to win that game. And again, like, these were two teams ranked in the top 10.
Agreed. They've beaten top 10 teams.
So that's why it matters to me.
They've beaten top 10 teams before. Marcus Freeman's beaten top 10 teams before.
Right. But this isn't the regular season. This was,
I know, but those all count.
The regular season.
Because if you lose those games, you're not here.
Right.
So they all count.
But we're talking about postseason games. That's part of it as well. This is part of the postseason, whether it was on your home campus or not.
Correct.
Nobody had ever done this before,
Completely agree with that. But you still got to sleep in your own bed. You didn't have to go anywhere. It's still a home game. You got a home crowd.
I don't think they slept in their own bed. They were still staying at a hotel because they always stay at hotels the night before.
Now you're just splitting hairs.
Oh, you're splitting hairs.
No. 70,000 people there were Notre Dame fans. That will never happen at a bowl game. Ever. Well,
I don't know. Like, go over to Columbus. Like, it didn't matter, but I think that it's hilarious that there was so much orange invading over there, right?
That's fair. What I'm saying for Notre Dame specifically, you're not going to play against a pro.
It actually was practically a neutral site over there in Columbus, and Ohio State still beat the brakes.
That's embarrassing for Ohio State and their fans and all that. But
I know.
In this case, I think they need to win one more game because look, when we talk about the New Year's Six or a big bowl game, all of those different things. There's a word that's really important here. Bowl. This was not a bowl game. This was a playoff game at home.
I get that, but this is also a completely different situation than we've ever had before. Was it technically a bowl? No. But where'd the comment go? I just had it queued up and then I lost it. Here, these were teams 1 through 12 playing.
Correct.
I get it. There are plenty of people who disagree with what I'm saying. There are plenty of people who agree with what I'm saying. I think it's probably a pretty good split. This is a game. This is a game that matters against a top 10 team in the postseason. It came after the regular season. So to me, it means every bit. Like, to me, it means more than beating Texas A&M even in the Cotton Bowl. Just because you went to a bowl game, like what ultimately what difference did that make? Like, this even means more. Like, the outcome of this game meant more than any of those, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, those kind of losses that Notre Dame has suffered.
I got one for you.
Okay.
So this is a big postseason win, right? That's your stance. Okay. So would we have put this whole postseason New Year's Six, schneid from 93 on behind us if Notre Dame would have beaten Clemson in the ACC championship in 2020? That's a postseason game.
Championship.
It's a postseason game.
Good question. They didn't, though.
Correct.
It's yet another game they lost. Maybe we would have.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, would we be having this conversation 4 years ago if that was the case? I say no. Personally, I say no. I don't think that counts, which is why I don't think this counts.
Okay.
Now, I'd be obviously upset if they lost this game, right? I would be very upset if they lost this game. I think they had every advantage in this game, roster, all of the things, right? I think they win this game, whether it's at a bowl site or otherwise. But I think they had an amazing advantage by having this game at home. And since all 4 home teams won, I think that advantage is even more heightened.
Justin wants to know where all the red was Friday. They were wearing orange in Columbus, Ohio. That's where
we're not talking about Notre Dame.
Look, I thought that there was going to be a bigger Indiana crowd. Kudos to Notre Dame fans because it didn't turn out that way. They packed the place. Awesome freaking environment, by the way. Awesome environment.
Yeah, it was. No doubt. No doubt. It was an unbelievable environment.
Notre Dame and just the whole thing, like they did some different stuff with the video. They had, obviously a lot of, like the big alums come back in. Just a great environment.
Mike, IU is not the worst team in the history of college football. Okay. IU played a closer game with Ohio State than Tennessee did.
Historically. Okay? But this season, they still won 11 games.
Come on. They're not the worst team in college football. Kent State might be the worst team in college football. IU is not the worst team in college football. Right. So can you take it down a notch?
Powerhouse, but they were a top 10 team, and like we'll have the conversation again, coming up in rapid fire about, this whole, that shows that Indiana didn't deserve to be there. So let's flash back to 2020 and 2018 and 2012 when Notre Dame played Alabama in 2 of those games and Clemson in the other game. And as Notre Dame fans, just get yourself in the right frame of mind now, Notre Dame fans, right? Was Notre Dame any less deserving of being in those spots because of how lopsided the result of those games were? My guess is you're going to say no because you're a Notre Dame fan. Like they deserved to be there, right? Like sometimes lopsided games happen. So we all had the conversation about who has Indiana played, who have they actually beaten, right? Sure. Like, and that was all fair, but the committee determined that they were worthy of having that spot, just like they determined SMU and, whoever else was worthy of having that spot. Look, were you going to really put a couple of 3-loss SEC teams in ahead of a 1-loss Big Ten team?
No, you wouldn't. It doesn't matter who the brand is, because the same thing that happened to Indiana would have happened to Alabama, because look what happened to Tennessee. I'm sorry. Everybody seems to forget. Like they just turned their brains off once the night game started on Saturday. SMU and IU, they didn't belong in the college football playoff. And then Tennessee gets the absolute doors blown off of them by Ohio State, who lost to Michigan. But, SEC is the top conference in the country, and 3-loss SEC teams belonged in the playoff.
Right.
Like, come on.
Do people really want to start going down that road where you're trying to say that 3-loss SEC teams are more deserving than, 1-loss teams from other Power 4 conferences? That's a pretty slippery slope to try to go down.
You're not going to convince
when you're
me.
parsing, who beat who and everything else.
Lane Kiffin is out there tweeting his little thumbs off about how bad SMU and IU are, but as soon as Tennessee gets waxed, it's crickets, from down there.
This is good, because like Antoine says, Indiana beat Michigan, who beat Ohio State, who waxed Tennessee, so
transitive properties alive and well.
So if we're going transitive, and then Tennessee beat Alabama, right? So like,
exactly.
Again,
sorry, you have 3 losses. You don't belong. You don't belong. Get over it. Alabama, if you really wanted to make it into the playoff, beat the 6-6, Oklahoma team that blew the doors off of you.
That's what it comes down to.
It's real simple.
It would have been in if they don't lose to Oklahoma and looked horrible in the process.
It's because of Alabama that Oklahoma gets to go to a bowl game. So, there you go. Don't lose to a 6-6 team, and you're in. Like, you have nothing to complain about. Nothing. So, yeah, I
actually like that we disagreed on the whole, does this end, like the big, like the 30.
We'll both be on the same page here in a few days. Don't worry. When Notre Dame wins against Georgia. So,
I mean, obviously, if that happens,
then it's not even a conversation anymore.
Right.
No doubt about it. No doubt about
For
it.
multiple reasons. You know, I guess
Right.
maybe the question is, because I asked you the other night before the game kicked off, would you rather Notre Dame be playing Alabama tonight than Indiana? My answer was yes. I would rather it have been Alabama, because then if you win that game, you do it automatically becomes more marquee, because now the whole conversation becomes, well, Notre Dame dominated this team. Did that team even deserve to be in? You know, that's obviously what's enveloped, you know, like the whole weekend. Did these teams even deserve to be in? So did Tennessee deserve to be in because they got, you know, they lost another lopsided game? It felt like it shut down some of the conversation, but at the same time, it just go ahead.
I don't know that Mike G is making the argument that he thinks he's making. He said Ohio State and Oregon combined for one win against the SEC in 10 years. Notre Dame had one this year. But what argument are you making with that particular comment? I don't really understand that, to be perfectly honest with you. And Ohio State just beat Tennessee, and they're an SEC team, so I don't know.
But I like what Blaine is saying. Oregon beat Ohio State, who beat Tennessee, who beat Bama, who beat Georgia. Oregon wins. No need for a playoff. I mean, you know, like that's essentially what we're doing. We're just going to eliminate, like, oh, we don't. And that's I've heard a couple national people say that. You know, it's like, you know, I would have been fine just keeping it at 2. You know, it's okay. So let's just reel it all the way back to the BCS days where we've only got 2 teams.
I mean, and I hate the, so-and-so played in the SEC. They wouldn't have the record that they have.
Not everybody's in the SEC.
Are we going to put 75 teams in the SEC? Because you can't play everybody.
Exactly.
And Mike,
here's a newsflash for you. Nobody forced the SEC to expand.
Exactly.
Nobody held a gun to their head and said, you've got to expand and add Texas and Oklahoma and all these other teams. Nobody made them do it. They did it for money.
Right.
Everybody did it for money. So I don't like that argument. You can stuff that argument in a sack, buddy.
And look, your best team, Mike, the best team in your conference is a transfer portal team that wasn't even in your conference last year. So what does that say? Your best team is a Big 12 team.
Mike, the answer is no, but it also doesn't matter. Like, because they're not in that conference. Notre Dame is not in that conference, but is Notre Dame allowed to be in the playoff and go, you know, play in these playoff games and win said playoff games? Yes. Just like Penn State is as well. Like, you don't have to be in that conference to be a good team. You know, that's part of the idea of expanding to 12 that everybody liked was, like, to me, I still think it's a much better system than what we had before.
Sure.
Well, you might not like the results. They might not have been great, but okay, if all you're going to do is overreact to one weekend, okay, great, because
here's my question,
it's
Mike.
not going to happen every year.
Yeah, Georgia's the SEC champ. Okay, so Georgia's the SEC champ, and you're saying how good the SEC is. So what happens when Notre Dame beats Georgia? Are you going to come back in here and be like, my bad, SEC clearly isn't as good as you think they are? I'm genuinely curious about that, because I don't think you will.
Should we only take the conference champions and, like, that's who's in our playoff now? Like, is that?
I mean, Georgia took Georgia Tech to 8 overtimes, and Notre Dame blew the doors off Georgia Tech.
Right.
So what are we saying? 8 overtimes. So, you know, I don't think people are as scared of Georgia as you think they are, dude.
We'll come back to this in rapid fire because it's one of our grievances. Let me just ask you this. Friday night, Riley Leonard throws the interception in the first quarter, first series of the game, and you felt blank.
It's like, oh boy, here we go. That's what I felt like. It wasn't great. I was genuinely nervous at that point. Not that they would lose the game, but that, you know, this great crowd and the great momentum that Notre Dame had coming into the game would just kind of dissipate very quickly. If IU goes down and scores that touchdown there. And obviously that didn't happen, thank goodness. But in the moment, I felt like, oh boy, they're going to have to do some work to get this crowd back.
Exactly. And it's like you need it. Like I felt like even on the first play, because Indiana showed up, loaded the box. I don't think it was a look that Rylie Leonard was probably ready for, and he probably should have checked to a pass on the first play, it looked like. Instead, they hand off right up the middle, it gets stuffed. And then it's like, boom, first pass, interception. And it's just your head starts spinning. It's like, man, this could, like, is this going to get out of hand? The whole thing I felt like, just hung in the balance right there. But it's like, okay, feels like the defense can probably step up, hold at least to a field goal. And then obviously when Xavier Watts gets the interception, everything turned. But I was not very confident in that moment right after the interception and how things might look out. To Rylie Leonard's credit, he really, regained himself, regained his focus very fast. Because then, my follow-up to this is after the Jeremiah Love touchdown run, which is the next offensive play for Notre Dame after that, after Watts gives him the ball back with his interception, after the Love touchdown, you felt blank.
Much better. At that point, I was like, this game's over. Like that's honestly how I felt, because in that one play was a microcosm of the difference in talent level from IU to Notre Dame. Like that's what it said to me. You saw, the opposite safety come down. He was getting ready to, fill the alley and make a play, and Jeremiah Love just ran right by him. And it's like, okay, they're not ready. They're not ready for this. They're not ready for what Notre Dame has to offer here.
Right.
And at that point, I figured the game was over. I mean, it was obviously very, very early at that point. There was like 12 minutes left in the first quarter, but you could see in one play the difference in talent level from one team to the other. And I was like, it's over. IU fans, I hope you enjoyed the interception. That was your excitement level for the day. And that game's over. Like, that's honestly how I felt. I felt really, really good after that. So I felt really good.
I didn't feel like the game was over at that point, but like it definitely reinforced like things that we were saying all last week about how, Indiana does have a good defense. You've got to give them credit for like a majority of the night. They stifled Notre Dame's run game, but what was I talking about last week? It's what happens in the 10% where they don't get, pounded at the line of scrimmage. And that was, that was the 10%. Because like for that game, it was probably even less than 10%, of those plays. But that was the kind of play, like that's what Curt Cignetti and Indiana had to be fearing. And it felt to me like after that play, like Indiana, Curt Cignetti was obviously scared for the rest of the night, but Indiana's players just looked scared for the rest of the night. Yeah. Obviously, their offense never got on track. They knew they had nothing they could counterpunch with that could look like what Jeremiah Love did on that play. Because even when Love was coming out of the backfield, before he even got to the sideline, I remember kind of saying out loud, "Oh, this could go." When he's still getting the corner, I'm like, this, because you looked how things were set up, and it's like this could go, and then it did. And they just looked like they were playing in fear of that happening for the rest of the night. It didn't happen for the rest of the night. Once it was 14-0, that's where I felt really secure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I mean,
that was just a grinded out drive that IU just had no answers for. You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame was like, okay, we'll run for 3, we'll throw, we'll do whatever, Right. I mean, it was 18
and because
plays,
of
9
that,
minutes.
Rylie Leonard had a really effective passing game the rest of the night as well. And everyone, was, all you got to do is shut down the run. Well, 98 yards later, you didn't shut down the run. Notre Dame ran for almost 200 yards. Like that one run alone was only 18 yards shy of what Indiana had given up in a game all season. And it was the third offensive play from scrimmage.
I know, right?
And how about the block by Anthony Knapp, by the way?
That's his best block of the night, and it wasn't close.
Might be his best block of the season.
Yeah, him and Flanagan just took those guys out. I mean, and again, the hole wasn't huge, didn't have to be. See that you and I talked about that last week. Somebody asked if Notre Dame's offensive line was elite. Remember that? And we're like, they don't have to be. They can be really good and just open up a hole that's this big. That's all they've got to do. And they've got to have it open for 2 seconds. And Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price will get through there and make a play. And we saw it on numerous occasions. And, yeah, you're right. IU shut down Notre Dame's run game, a decent chunk of the day, but not the whole day. And that's where Notre Dame will get you.
Right.
They'll just keep bringing it.
And again,
they're going to keep bringing
the fear of that happening again, like they played pretty well at the line of scrimmage, and obviously Spindler going out. And we're going to talk about some of these injuries here in just a minute. That had some impact on it as well. But, again, after that opens things up for Riley Leonard in the pass game because they have to devote so much to that. I mean, Riley Leonard, he could have had a better game if not for a couple of drops here and there.
Look, you look at, we talked about X Factor, and I said Riley Leonard was going to be the X Factor in this game. They're going to go as he goes, right? Well, third down conversions were probably the best that they've been all season. In that drive that you talk about, I think Notre Dame converted 4 third downs in that drive alone. I think there were 5 of 7 in the first half. They were doing things they were just making the offense go.
They were 7 of 13 on third down
right
the other night.
Yeah. Like I said, I think they were 5 of 7 in the first half. So, hey, I love the confidence from Georgia fans, and they have every reason to be confident. Notre Dame hasn't beaten them. They haven't. And Georgia's won 2 national championships. They have every reason to be confident. And that's why I'm not even pushing back a whole lot on what these guys are saying in the chat. They have every reason to be confident. It's awesome. But you better put some respect on Notre Dame's name, because if you look past Notre Dame, you're going to lose. That's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a good game. Georgia's a really good football team. There's no doubt about it. But, if you look past them, man, you're going to regret it. That's where I'm at with this whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think it's going to be a
great
knockdown drag out.
It's going to be great.
In the line of scrimmage.
I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great college football game. And that's what I'm excited about.
Yep. So got some comments from Marcus Freeman, starting with Jeremiah Love, who wasn't just nursing that sore knee that he had from, when he tweaked it against USC. He was sick during the week as well. And he spoke with the media afterwards, and, he was congested. Here's Marcus Freeman talking about Jeremiah Love getting through that game Friday night.
We didn't do anything for him. That was all him. He is a tough individual that had some flu-like symptoms that, did what it took for him to be able to go out there and perform. And Katie showed me an interview. At least he kept his clothes on in pregame warm-up, not like some of those whiteouts did. But he's a competitor, man. There was nothing that was going to prevent Jeremiah Love from playing on Friday, and he played at a high level too.
He said that Love said after the game that, he was getting a little gassed at the end of that run. And, he looked up at the video board and, he kind of slowed down a little bit, looked up at the video board, saw those guys behind him kind of accelerated. And
he's like, they weren't going to catch me.
No,
that was my favorite comment from him after the game. Somebody asked him about it. Obviously, he's like, yeah, they weren't going to catch me. Okay. That's fantastic. I love that. Look, Jeremiah Love's next level, man. And anybody that watches Notre Dame play, and I actually did listen to a couple of Georgia podcasts and some things like that since I got a little extra time on my hands. And, there was one guy and it was the guy that was posted on the Irish Breakdown board. It was like a 20-minute show, so that was easy. He's obviously very confident as a Georgia fan, but he also, to his credit, recognizes the talent that's on Notre Dame. He's like, that Jeremiah Love kid is really good. And he is. But not once did he talk about Jadarian Price. And I hope that continues. Because if look, could they shut down Jeremiah Love? Is it possible? Sure. But I just have a hard time seeing them shut down Love, Price, and Leonard in the same game. I have a hard time seeing that. So You focus on Jeremiah
And
Love.
that's the
That sounds
thing.
good
When
to
you've
me.
got those three heads, and like there was some conversation. Remember after the Love touchdown, there was some talk up in the press box about, someone thought, oh, his knee is hurt. He can't cut because he wasn't in on the next series. It's like they alternate series.
That's what
Have you
they've done all
watched
year.
this season? He's only getting 10, 11, carries per game. Like that's how this whole season has gone.
Right.
And, again, like we've talked about it before, that to me is part of why they're still so fresh and they're able to make those kind of plays at this point in the season, because they haven't take that kind of hit. That, they don't have all that wear on the tires. I think that has benefited both of them greatly. And you're absolutely right. It's not just Jeremiah Love. Like every time you're geared up and you think like that's the only guy that you've got to stop, look at Jadar. There's a reason that both of those guys have some of the best, yards after contact rates, like upper echelon, both of them, yards after contact in the nation, as well as explosive plays. They both have those kind of breakaway plays. They can both hit them, So, yeah, it's not just Jeremiah Love. It's Jadarian Price as well. And it's also Rylie Leonard. And it was interesting because really Leonard, it was, I think, what was it, late in the first half, he had his first carry. Like they weren't trying to use him much as a runner. And I think, part of that is, the reads that he is making. And again, how Indiana was stacking things so much, devoting things to trying to shut down the run. So they didn't do a whole lot of, designed runs for him, but he was very effective as a passer as well. And, a lot of the conversation going into that game was, well, they've got this great run game, but, can Rylie Leonard throw the ball as well? He looked pretty good. I mean, just like he's done all season. He did 23 of 32, solid numbers, little over 200 yards,
but
a touchdown, and he runs for one as well.
That's where he needs to be. We said this going into the game before, right? I said an ideal
72% of his passes, Vince.
Exactly.
72%.
An ideal stat line for Rylie Leonard's about 200 yards passing, about 60 yards rushing, and be responsible for about 3 touchdowns. He was a little low on the rushing, and he was responsible for 2 touchdowns. Okay. He didn't need to do any more than that. Like, it wasn't even necessary. You know what I mean? So, look, he's never going to be the guy that sits back there and throws for 450 yards. That's just not who he is, and that's not the way this offense is put together. And if that's what you're looking for, you're never going to be happy with Rylie Leonard. You're just not. You might be happy with some of the guys that are going to be playing for Notre Dame in the future, but you're never going to be happy with Rylie Leonard, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Keep doubting Notre Dame. Please. I will give Georgia all the flowers because they're a really good football team and they have a really good recent history. I will continue to do it, right? Until that game, until kickoff, right? But keep doubting Notre Dame. That's exactly the spot that they want to be in.
Well, the bad news, of course, from today, and we've had plenty of people already, talking about it in the chat, is no more Rylie Mills, and Freeman talked a little bit about it this afternoon.
You can't replace Rylie Mills. I mean, yes, the production, but the leadership, a captain, very similar to the things I said about Benjamin Morrison when he was out. You feel awful for him as a person, a guy that decided to come back, prove his draft stock, be a captain. The value he provided this team is tremendous, and he's done an excellent job as a football player and a leader. But you have to replace the production. You got to replace what he did for our defense in different ways. And so, we have capable guys that will step up, that have stepped up all year, that we're very confident in. And those guys will have a bigger role this week.
All right, so no Rylie Mills. And, it's like as soon as he went out, it's like, oh, I hope this isn't, what it looks like it might be, and unfortunately, it is. I mean, it is obviously a big blow, because look, we talked about just what getting Howard Cross back could mean, and Rylie Mills had not been nearly as effective the last 3 games with Howard Cross out as he was against Indiana the other night, and he was just having a monster game, just wreaking havoc all over the place. And now you got Cross back on, when those two guys have played together, that's the kind of production and just destructiveness that you've seen from that interior. How big, especially going up against a team like Georgia, Vince, how big do you think this is?
Oh, it's massive. This is the last player that you wanted to lose. Now I say that, and you're probably going to come up with like Rylie Leonard, Jeremiah Love. Like, okay, I get all that, but like, I mean, he was going to be a huge part of he is a huge part of this defense. He obviously took his game to another level, when Howard Cross went out and all of those things, and he's been dominant. He has been, the play he got hurt on, he got a sack. You know what I mean? Like, this is a massive blow to Notre Dame, and it's going to make people take a step back, and it's going to make them rethink kind of the way this game is going to go, because the winner in the trenches is going to win this game, and you lose a guy like Rylie Leonard, it moves the needle. It does. It moves the needle. Now, I still think Notre Dame can be successful, but this is a massive blow for Notre Dame. Massive blow.
It is, because, look, especially since Traore and Botelho have been out.
Sure.
Their main pass rush has come from Cross and Mills in tandem when those two guys are in there together, because they both have to be accounted for. And like that, and like when those guys are in, like there's only so many guys that you can block. And, he's got 7.5 sacks. I'm, like very confident in Gabe Rubio, just the size, the strength, everything else. Georgia's offense is going to operate a bit differently than Indiana's. Their offensive line is also going to be better than Indiana's. Like, my biggest concern, like I don't have like any concerns about Gabe Rubio holding up against Georgia, playing the run well against Georgia, being physical, or him, or potentially Armel Mukum, or maybe like, because again, like Rubio's at the top of the depth chart there now, and they've got Mukum listed at second. How much maybe do we see of Donovan Heinisch playing next to Cross from time to time? I've got a feeling we'll see at least some of that. We'll be curious to see if we see any of Sean Sevillano. But, again, like specific to the pass rush, I don't know what they're going to get from that now with Rylie Mills out. So that's my biggest concern is just that so much of the pass rush has been generated from that interior when Cross and Mills are in there together.
Oh, it's a legitimate concern. They're going to have to, it's kind of like Moneyball, right? You're going to have to replace him in the aggregate. You're going to have to find multiple guys probably to affect the rush, and a young guy that you haven't really counted on, obviously, this year, and Armel Mukum or Sevillano or whoever, they're going to have to help out. They're going to have to take up some snaps, and they're going to have to, rush the passer and do all of these different things. Like, they're going to have to do that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it, but I very much trust Al Golden and Al Washington to figure this out.
Right. Like Antoine asked if Bryant Young can play on the inside. It's
not really built for the inside.
Yeah. It's so much different because, like, Rylie Mills bought like the man strength and and the size of the body that Rylie Mills has,
it's just different.
And the moves that you make as a 3 technique are completely different than a more slender, still developing body, like Bryant Young playing on the outside. There's just such a difference playing edge rusher versus trying to move in and play 3 technique and do that against interior linemen, versus one-on-one with a tackle, or trying to shed a double team block, with a tackle and a tight end and that kind of stuff. It's just so much different, like it's almost like maybe not to the same extreme, but I was going to say like a left tackle going to right tackle or vice versa, just the different body movements.
Look, the key in this game, and I obviously don't know what Brian's going to come up with for, keys to victory defensively and all of that. But, Georgia's obviously going to have a kid who's making his first start at quarterback. You need to make him uncomfortable. Whatever that means, you're going to have to make him uncomfortable, and you're going to have to fire some linebackers. You're going to have to do some different things. But, they're not going to change their philosophy defensively. They're not going to go to a bunch of zone defense, in the back end. They're going to play man-to-man. They're going to ask their front to get pressure. They're going to ask the linebackers to do what their linebackers do. They're not going to change what they do. It's just going to be a next man up situation.
Right.
Just what does that look like? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
like I said, I have a lot of faith in the Owls to kind of get this figured out, and we'll see.
Unfortunately, they've got a little extra time.
They do. It's not just a week.
Things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the good news: Rylie Mills done. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa has been upgraded to questionable this week.
So he's been rehabbing. Obviously getting mental work in, but hasn't been able to practice. For now, we want to see the progression into practice, and then build that confidence. He built that confidence in himself and also in his coaches and the doctors that he can go out there and get his job done, which I think he will.
So I actually asked him that.
News.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him that question. What has he been doing? What do you need to see from him? And you didn't get like great detail. He's been rehabbing, and now we'll see what he can do, kind of thing. So what exactly that looks like? It is at least good news that he's on the he's listed as questionable now, as opposed to out last week, not even practicing last week, because like he's a guy, and like when we talk about pass rush, if nothing else, if he can give them some, like 10 to 12 quality pass rush type snaps per game for this game, as an example, like that would be pretty good news, I think.
No, it's great news. I mean, that was about as good a news as you could come up with, along with Rocco Spindler and what his health is. But KVA, adds, if he's healthy, and that's obviously a big if, right? He needs to be 100%. I don't think I'd put him out there if he was 75, 80%, because you've got the four other guys that are playing linebacker are all in great shape, right? And they're doing, we talked about it, in the post-game show and upon further review, the linebackers played really well on Friday. And
they did. And I actually asked another question, about the linebackers, just because like he was talking about physicality after the game, and it just stood out like freaking watching, like to me, it's still kind of amazing, especially, like we went for so long talking about BKPTSD and, all this different stuff, the philosophy. Now, granted, these guys aren't true freshmen, but, KVA obviously.
KVA is, yeah.
In looking at, the quality that he's given them this year. And then you look at Osbury and Drake Bowen and like those guys, both of those guys had tackles for loss the other night. They were both playing fast and physical out there. And like looking at these guys in their first year, like being regulars out there on the field, it's pretty amazing, especially like Drake Bowen, like to see an explosive, dynamic linebacker like that making those kind of plays. It's like they almost kind of just fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Like they're not the linebackers are not a talking point anymore, right? And that's because they're playing so well. They don't have to be a talking point.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with the fact that the national media has no idea who anybody on this defense is outside of, Benjamin Morrison, who's on the sideline, and, Rylie Mills, who's on the sideline. And, they have no idea who these guys are. Okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. I am absolutely good with that. So, this defense is just going to pick right up where it left off. And, are they going to miss Rylie Mills? You're darn right they are. They're absolutely going to miss Rylie Mills. I am not diminishing that fact, but this defense is going to take off right where they are. And KVA, if he's good enough to come in for 10 to 15 snaps and give a good pass rush or, get into pass coverage, knock a ball down, then it's worth it. You know what I mean? If even if his snaps are limited, I'm fine with that because of what a good athlete he is.
And this is going to be such a different kind of, attack against this Georgia team. One, because they don't have Carson Beck anymore, and we're talking about a pretty good athlete. I don't know if he's quite like Riley Leonard, but he's obviously a mobile quarterback. He can run, but that's my point. It's going to be, there's going to be much more emphasis on containing this quarterback, because let's be honest, Curtis Rourke, not a mobile quarterback. He took off and ran once or twice. basically because Notre Dame was essentially just saying, okay, go ahead and run if you want to run. It's not that big a deal. We're much more worried about you hitting one of these passes downfield because that's the mode of their operation.
Sure.
Right. So, again, like it's a legit concern that Rylie Mills is going to be out, but at the same time, you are getting a big body with a guy like Gabriel Rubio. Potentially, like if Armel Mukam is asked to step in, you're getting another big body out there. Sevillano, same thing. My point is it's going to look different. I think the main thing you want from those guys is just, like Marcus Freeman says, they don't want to play football, but at the same time, they just want to occupy some bodies inside and let Notre Dame's more athletic guys go to work and trying to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. It is funny to me how confident Georgia fans are in their backup quarterback, which I'm glad you have confidence in him. But
to their credit, they obviously beat Texas with their backup quarterback.
In the second half,
game was already playing out in a different way by the time he had to come in.
And look,
so it's not like he had to start like.
But Sean, if he's so good, how come he wasn't starting the rest of the year?
Say that again now.
If he's so good, how come he wasn't starting over Carson Beck?
Right.
Like the Georgia fans, look, I'm fine with you having faith in your guy, and that's great. But they're like, Notre Dame would have had a better chance of beating Georgia if Carson Beck was the quarterback.
Right.
Really? Like, really? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. If he's that good, how come he wasn't starting the whole season? That's my thing. But you have your confidence. That's you do that. That's fine.
It's just the talking points just change week to week.
That's exactly right. It's blind faith in your team. It's blind faith. Carson Beck was the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman coming into the season. But now the backup is better because Carson Beck is hurt.
Right.
But now the backup is better.
He was the best guy all along. He should have been out there to begin with.
Come on, man. Come on.
Look, Georgia's going to be more talented. They're going to be more physical. They're going to be more talented than Notre Dame. But at the same time, when you look at Georgia, like, are you as weary of Georgia as you probably were 2 years ago?
No, not at all. The Georgia team that I've watched this year,
I'm more worried because again, like Rylie Mills being out is going to be a fact. Like you want your best players when you're going in games like this. But
100%. But like Georgia as a team, watching them play the game of football,
right?
They're not the teams that they were when they won the
playing
national
field is much more even now.
They're
than
just
2
not.
Years ago.
And even a Georgia fan should be able to at least say that they're not as good as they were when they were winning the national championship. Those 2 championships. I mean, just throw the tape on and watch it, man. Like those national championship teams weren't giving up over 200 yards rushing to UMass. They just weren't. Okay. So they weren't going to 8 overtimes with Georgia Tech. And go down the line of the struggles that Georgia has had this season. Those teams weren't that. Now, look, Georgia's still a really good team, and they're a really good program. Kirby Smart's a really good coach. All of those things still exist, but they're not who they were then. That's all I'm saying. They're not there. They're here. Maybe that's still good enough to win a championship this year. It might be. But they're not what they were. And come on. And if you're saying they are, then you're a blind and you're painting a dog on your head. Like that's just not reality.
Yeah, Brent jumped in late. Rylie Mills, for anyone else who missed it, Rylie Mills, Marcus Freeman announced today, is out for the season. So for the rest of the season.
Yeah. There's a knee injury. Just, and somebody had mentioned something about, we've had injuries on the line. Is that a strength and conditioning problem? All those things. No.
Not when it's an MCL. It's an ACL.
He got leg whipped. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, man. Like that's just happenstance, and the line injuries have been various things, but they're mostly knees. There's not a whole lot you can do about that kind of thing. They're all wearing the knee braces, they're all doing all the preventative stuff. They're strengthening it, they're doing all of those things, but It's just there is not much you can do about that kind of stuff.
All right. So again, that's the bad news. Rylie Mills is done for the rest of the season, however long that lasts. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa upgraded to questionable with a little bit more than a week to go before the Sugar Bowl next week on New Year's Day. So he's trying to get himself back on the field. He hasn't played since the Army game when he injured his knee. And now Charles Jagusah, who we saw practice last week for the first time since training camp, he may be available for the Sugar Bowl. They don't know exactly to what extent his availability will entail, though, and even in terms of what position might he be practicing at for the next week.
He's really hasn't been practicing much. This is going to be his first full week of practice, and so we'll figure out what's his best position as we continue to game plan and move forward. But there's a consistency in that offensive line. They've been doing a really, really good job, and at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for Notre Dame. But there's a lot of confidence we have in the guys that have been there, and with Charles coming back.
So again, not a lot of detail, Vince. He was asked specifically, will he practice at tackle? Will he practice at guard? And that was the response. So there's still a lot to be determined in terms of Jagusah, even though I know a lot of, there have been some fans wanting to plug him in at guard right now. So
yeah, look, that's not going to happen. Number one, right now, I would assume that Rocco Spindler is going to play guard to start this game, and he's one of the better guards on the team. I mean, even look, an 85% Rocco Spindler is better than Pendleton, in my opinion. And so if he can go, he goes. And that's just where it's at. You tape it up and you go. I think if the game was in a different situation on Friday, he probably continues to play. Now, he didn't play great after he got hurt. There was 2 series where he didn't play great because he just couldn't anchor on that foot. And if you can't anchor, you're not going to be good. And so they're going to rest him. And this is where it comes into play, where it's good that they've got double-digit days between games. You're not – look, here's the reality of the situation. You're not throwing Charles Jagusah out there against Georgia after not playing all season and practicing for 1 week.
Because, again, they don't even know what position they want to practice him at.
Correct.
Yet.
He'll be a backup.
So he's not just going to take some reps and now he's going to go start at right guard because he was going to be the left tackle at the start of the season. Like there's still I agree with what USMA is saying, get to the semis, maybe the final, maybe possible. Sure. Maybe you see him in there, like if Spindler's ankle is right, is nagging, is lingering. And I think Josh was just saying, I thought Spindler is questionable for right now. So like he's right. They've got to figure that out. But again, they've got 10 days, so like that could change quite a bit by the end of the week. And then you add in the fact that you have what is today, the 23rd. So you still have 8 days to go, 9 days to go, until you actually get to the game next week. So that could change quite a bit. Yeah. Like for Rocco Spindler, just in terms of how he feels in the next week.
I just, he's not the easy fix. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, you're not going to just plug him in because now he's practicing. Like that's not realistic for an offensive lineman. You have to have continuity with the guys around you. He's literally never played with these guys.
Continuity and strength. And, that's, again, because that was a pectoral tear and they said pectoral and shoulder.
Right.
So like, what's his strength even like right now? Like when was he able to start lifting, just how strong, because that's such a big part of it, especially like if you wanted him to play guard, to be able to come in and be physical, like how strong is he actually going to be after not being able to lift for probably at least 3 months or something like that, 2-3 months.
100%. So, I mean, again, he's not the quick fix that everybody thinks he is, not just because of who he is, but also because of the situation, the play, the position that he plays. That's just not a plug-in kind of a situation. It's just not.
So a final thought from Marcus Freeman. Of course, Christmas is this Wednesday. And what does that
This is a great quote. I watched this live. This should fall in line with the grievance. And I will get to that. But this was a great question because his facial response, which you can't show, but his facial response was perfection.
Away, like go home.
Like, do the players get to go home at all, or are they here?
No. We're gonna celebrate Christmas together, and then I haven't met with them yet. We'll meet today, but it's an honor. It's a privilege to be able to celebrate Christmas together, with your football program, with your football family, and to be practicing for a college football playoff game. Man, there's a lot of college football teams that would want to do that. And so we got to make sure we understand, and our guys do. Our guys, and none of those guys are thinking about going home. At least they won't tell me if they are. But we're going to have Christmas together, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
I mean, Christmas morning, like, forget that Christmas tree. You better be out there on the field practicing.
Hilarious.
Right?
Hilarious.
I mean, like that's.
Do you really think they were going to send the players home for a few days and then just come on back?
There was no way anyone was going to get. I thought the question might go somewhere, like, what's the schedule going to look like since Christmas is in the middle of the week?
Legit question, but not, do they get to go home?
Right.
Come on, man. Like, that's wow. And I not expected from that particular individual. I'll just say that.
I agree. Smart guy.
I know. Doesn't usually ask those kinds of questions.
No, not as crotchety as some other people that I know either, for the most part.
Yep, I got a grievance coming for all that.
Uh-oh! Are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, it's Festivus for the rest of us, everybody!
So it is time.
Looking forward to this all day.
As promised. Can hardly contain my excitement. December 23rd, a.k.a. Festivus. A Festivus for the rest of us. Thank you, Frank Costanza. It's a Festivus miracle.
It is. It's a Festivus miracle.
No feats of strength tonight, but rapid fire is going to be all airing of grievances in honor of Festivus. So we're going to get into it right now, and we are going to start with this on ESPN's College Game Day from IU head coach Curt Cignetti. What, about 2 hours or so? 3 hours before
almost kickoff? No, it was about two.
Like
it was being aired as I was driving to the stadium, so somewhere between 5:45 and 6 o'clock. So we're talking 2 hours before kickoff. This is what you were hearing.
Okay, of course. There's a lot of skeptics. There's a lot of doubters. I get it, right? Haven't beat a top 25 team. Nebraska's 25th in the coach poll. We beat their 56-7. And I've never beat a top 25 team. Well, Coastal Carolina back when we were little James Madison, moving up to the Sun Belt there, 22nd end of the year, we beat them 47-7. Okay. So we don't just beat top 25 teams, we beat the shit out of them. Okay.
Okay, Vince, you first. Go ahead.
I listened to him say that on the drive in, and at that point, I knew that Notre Dame was going to whoop their butt. Like, I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And this was, by the way, just so everybody understands the sequence of events, this was after the Notre Dame did their player walk from the Basilica to the stadium. So Notre Dame is now in the stadium, in the locker room, getting ready, doing their thing. Marcus Freeman is in there along with all of his other coaches, actually coaching the kids up, getting ready for the game. And this numbskull is out on the stage just trying to, I don't know what he was doing, a little self-gratification out there, trying to pump everybody up and get everybody excited. And at that point, I was like, this game is not going to be close because he has no idea the arena that he is about to step into and the gladiators that he is about to fight. And it played out exactly like that.
I mean,
he coached scared. He was scared. His team, puckered up. It didn't end well. And why would you do that? Why would you paint the biggest target possible on you and your team by going out on that stage within 2 hours of kickoff?
You're gonna sound off like that, and then in the biggest game of your life, You're going to punt when you've got the ball in plus territory
Correct.
in the first quarter and you're already trailing. Like they got the ball at the Notre Dame 37 and you're going to punt. Because I get it. Like, okay, 37, 47, that's a 54-yard field goal. That's not a short field goal. But you're going to punt instead of going for it? Like, with all this talk, and then you punt again in the fourth quarter when you're down 20-3, and then you're going to sit here and tell me about how you beat Coastal Carolina?
Seriously.
Like,
and Nebraska was 25th in the coaches poll. Like, you had to single out a specific poll.
Congratulations for beating the team everybody else in the country has beaten for the last 15 years.
If you're going to go back and you're going to talk about teams that were ranked when you beat them, like half the teams on Notre Dame's schedule were ranked when they beat them, and because they beat them, they fell out of the rankings. Come on, man! Like that was just.
I'm just glad we don't have to listen to this guy anymore. And
Seriously.
now, like anytime this guy starts puffing his chest and his whatever else, like all you got to do is point to the scared look on his face all night long. He coached scared all night. And players played scared all night for all this puffing the chest and all the bravado and everything else. As soon as Jeremiah Love housed that touchdown, 98 yards, he was scared the rest of the night. He had he had no counterpunch. He had no idea what to do.
I mean, they were running draw plays.
He was like the Russian coach in Miracle.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do. Yeah, he had no idea what to do in this game. He had no clue. He thought he explained away the loss to Ohio State when there was a clear differentiation between talent.
Right.
Okay. He thought he explained that. Oh, we can't go on the silent count, and special teams was really bad, and that's why we lost this game.
It was about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the fact that they were out talented.
Yeah, we're gonna fix all of that. Okay, sure you are. Okay. So then when it's 3rd and long, you're running the ball against Notre Dame when you couldn't really get anything going in the run game because your quarterback, who was born in Canada, so wasn't going to have any problem with the cold, couldn't complete a pass. You didn't think he could do it on 3rd and long, so you're just handing the ball off and Notre Dame's tackling you for a loss. Like that, that's how you're coaching this game? I mean, I actually felt bad for the arrogant IU fans because of the product that was put on the field by Curt Cignetti and the plays that he was calling.
Vince, I said for 2 weeks that Notre Dame, you had 2 very well-coached teams, but on Friday night, there was one well-coached team, and it was also the team with more talent. And I said that the talent was going to rise to the top, and you were going to see a difference, and that was going to be the difference. But it was also the difference in how they were coached and the mentality that they had. Like Notre Dame didn't need a coach, trying to blow all this confidence into their ears and their hearts. Like they had it already.
And I've said this before, and I still believe it. Like I thought that he did a pretty decent job of using that bravado to make his guys believe that they could win and all that. And I don't have a problem with that.
That's never done anything.
Right. I actually have no problem with that. You know what I mean? But doing it on game day inside of 2 hours before kickoff that's where it crossed the line for me. That's when it became too much. That's when it became an act. Like that's when it became a circus.
Doing that live,
right?
Because I think was it Shane Gillis who pointed it out? Like the fact that you're doing that while your team is in the stadium preparing for the biggest games of their lives, and you're going out and doing a TV opportunity on game day. Like it's one thing if you had recorded an interview that they were going to use on game day beforehand. Like Marcus Freeman wasn't out there doing live interviews Friday night, right?
Exactly. At his home stadium. He wasn't out there at 3:30 when the game kicked off or when the show kicked off, and he certainly wasn't out there at 6:00. Like, I mean, that was embarrassing is what it was. That was a you can't read the room kind of a situation for me. Mm-hmm. And that, like I said, that's where it crossed the line and it became a circus and not a team motivating thing because the players aren't going to hear that. They're actually getting ready for the game.
Right.
So being out there you're
doing your team
you.
No service at
Correct.
all by being out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that was embarrassing is what it was. Now, I will say this. I watched his post-game press conference. And it's about as humble as I've ever seen Curt Cignetti be.
We have no choice but to be humble once you get your whipped, right?
You would have thought it would have been like that all the way leading up to the game too.
I really wish that I could have been there to hear what was said in the handshake the two head
Oh
coaches
yeah, that was
after the
glorious.
game because he said something, Marcus
Yeah.
Freeman, and then like it looked like Freeman was kind of trying to leave, and Cignetti, like kept talking, and Freeman kind of gave him the look like, all right, I'm out of here, man. We're gonna go celebrate.
That was a moment where I almost wanted like Freeman to like throw him a banana, like obviously it wasn't a racist situation, but like just the like we heard you kind of a thing, you know what I mean? Like that's what I wanted to happen, but it kind of did. I mean, it kind of did. It's like just keep your mouth shut. Hey, here's a tip for you: keep your mouth shut next time. Just not good.
I thought, and again, like Indiana's defense played pretty well most of the night. I was, and I know, like, I wasn't expecting, and I know they had a significant injury on their offensive line, but I wasn't expecting their offensive line to just be, I don't want to say flat out bad, but Notre Dame just whipped them.
All night long.
I wasn't expecting Notre Dame to just whip them the way they did up front.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Notre Dame's defense came ready to play. I mean, bottom line, Notre Dame's defense came ready to play, and that's what gives me look. Georgia's offensive line is better than Indiana's offensive line. I don't think any of us would say otherwise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I still think Notre Dame is going to make them work for whatever they get against Georgia, right? And I'm not saying they're going to dominate the way they did against IU, but I don't know if the moment was too big for IU. I don't know any of that, but they were in the
too
face
big for their coach.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's a great call. They were not only physically in the face of Curtis Rourke, they were also in his head. They're also in his head. And while they didn't get as much pressure on Rourke that I would have wanted physically, they did it mentally because he was throwing the ball all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was putting it in the dirt. He was throwing it out of bounds. Like, he wasn't even giving his guys a shot, in this game. So they got to him. There's no doubt about it. And again, Georgia's starting a guy that's never started a game before in college in a pretty big stage. Maybe he'll be amazing. Maybe he will be. Maybe I'm wrong. But Notre Dame's going to make him think a lot in this game.
No, I agree. And that's like, you underestimate this Notre Dame defense at your peril.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. And while, that wasn't Rourke's worst game of the season, but it was among
it had to be close
games of the season. Yeah,
it had to be close.
From a pure passing standpoint, the Ohio State game was by far his worst. I think this was probably like his second or third worst afterwards. So.
Right.
Okay, Vince, I've got a grievance.
Oh, here we go.
So there's this old man that I sat next to in the press box the other night.
Oh God.
And he's like, it's cold in here. And then I, look up at the windows, they're cracked open a little bit. And I'm like, feels kind of comfortable in here to me. And then he's complaining, at halftime, the pasta's no good. He can't eat the pasta. Do you know who I'm talking about, Vince? You have become spoiled press box Vince. I don't even know who I'm sitting to most of the time now.
Coming right at me, huh? That's how this is going to go. I got a lot of problem with you people.
I just felt like we'd have fun with that one.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. The pasta wasn't good. I was really disappointed.
I agree on the pasta.
I was disappointed in the spread. I don't know why they can't just go back to the chicken like we used to have back in the day.
You're
Nelson's
hung
chicken.
up on that Porta Pit chicken.
I will always be hung up on it. It was such an easy thing, though, because
chicken.
They make it right outside the stadium. You put it in a cooler. You bring it up to the press box. You get a guy with a giant glove, and he just puts it on your plate.
Everything's made in-house now.
I know. It's disappointing.
So, yeah.
Disappointing.
Press box Vince. That's a different Vince, ladies and gentlemen.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I 20 years of sitting up in the press box has absolutely spoiled me.
I thought it was pretty nice. Like, I liked, we did get a little bit more ambiance because they, they had like.
And that's why they opened the windows.
The windows cracked open. I think you only noticed it because you knew they were going to be open because they said in that email.
Probably.
Because I didn't even know. I was like, I feel pretty comfortable in here to me. You're like, it's cold.
It's cold. Leave me alone.
I'm going to bring you a heating pad and a blanket next time. Next December when we're sitting up there again.
It's yeah, exactly. When again, I like your thought process there. But you know what solved the problem for me was going and standing outside for a quarter and a half.
There you go.
When I came
That's
back
true.
in, it's toasty.
That's true.
Felt great. It felt great. So, it is what it is. I actually told somebody, before the game started, I was like, if I wasn't up in the press box, I'd probably just watch the game at home.
I think you might have told me that.
It's probably true. This is where I'm at.
Oh my goodness. All right. Do you have anything that you want to before we? I've got this.
No,
list,
continue.
I'll
I'll
make sure that you get some of yours in.
No,
too,
I'll interject
so.
as we go. Yeah, I'll interject as we go.
I mean, we touched on this in the main segment, but the narratives that teams didn't belong in the playoff because they lost lopsided games. Look, most of the same people who are saying the wrong teams got in the playoffs were probably the same people picking those teams to win upsets last week.
Exactly.
Like, you can't have it both ways. I get that everybody wants to have it both ways, but I'm just stop it. Stop it. Like you're still going to get some of these games that are going to go like this. Like to me, like everyone's ripping, obviously Indiana and SMU, Lane Kiffin's, riding Tennessee, and then Tennessee loses. So, like you don't have no leg to stand on at that point. Tennessee was clearly deserving based on the record. They only had 2 losses. So like it's very easy to go back and second guess this after all of these different results. It's not like there haven't been lopsided playoff games before. Like Alabama pounded Michigan State a few years back. TCU, remember they got into the national championship game and got their butts whipped, but they still won a semifinal in a 4-team playoff. Like sometimes these things happen. LSU spanked some teams around. Who was it that they beat? Oklahoma. They just blasted Oklahoma a few years back in the playoff. Like this stuff happens, right? Like even in the 4-team playoff, you saw some of these lopsided games.
Almost every time, Sean.
To me, the bigger problem is the giving the buys, the automatic buys to the conference champions. Like the teams that were the actual 3 and 4 seeds had to play in this first round game, because Boise State and Arizona State got those first round buys because they were lower seeds, but they were the highest ranked of the 2 of the 4 highest ranked of the conference champions. So like if you don't have that, I think you're naturally like if you actually gave the 4 buys based on merit, like the 4 teams that you actually think are the 4 best teams in the country, or even if you just say, like only 1 per conference, but still, like you're going to have closer to a true top 4. Like if you did it that way this year, you would have had Boise State and Indiana playing in the first round. I think that's probably a pretty evenly matched game. You would have had Clemson and Tennessee. Tennessee would have been favored in that game. Like Alabama, I think actually would have been in the playoff if you didn't, do it that way because of the fact that, teams end up getting pushed down in that whole thing. I think they would have like played Ohio State and you would have had Notre Dame playing Arizona State. I think Notre Dame still wins that game, but the entire first round looks different if you do it that way.
Look, here's the amazing part, right? So it was chalk in the first round, right? And there were blowouts and the games weren't all that competitive, and I get that. And Brian actually went over when we did Upon Further Review last night. He went over every single 14 playoff that we've had up to this point, and there were blowouts every single year.
Right.
Most of the time, multiple, by the way, every single year except
because the
one.
team that won the championship was just that much better than everybody else.
Correct. And so, this is to be expected. Look, it was chalk because it was a bunch of home venues and they were the better teams. They were the higher seeded teams. They were better teams. You move on to the second level now, right? Round 2 or whatever they're calling it, semifinals. I think there's a legitimate possibility that every single lower ranked team could win in this round. I think there's a legitimate possibility that could happen. And that's because of the way that they were forced to do the seeding. You know what I mean? Like you could make a case for every single lower ranked, the quote unquote away team to win every game, all 4 games It's an absolute possibility, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. That's messed up to me a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't like that. Like, I'm fine with conference champions getting in, but I don't think they should be automatically rewarded with a bye. And this isn't Notre Dame fan talking. If you don't want to give Notre Dame a bye because they're not in a conference every single time, whatever. What I witnessed on Friday, I will take that every single year and be very happy with it. You know what I mean?
The home game advances.
I'm honest. I'm fine with it. I there's no travel involved. It's a home game. Like, I'll do that every year. That's fine. So this isn't a Notre Dame homer take.
Even
what
if
I'm
you have
saying
to take
is,
an extra blanket up to the press box. Yes,
absolutely. I'm low for next time. It's all good. I haven't witnessed a December home game before. But Arizona State and Boise State get an automatic bye. Like, that was a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of teams. You know what I mean? So I think they just need to tweak it a little bit. I just don't think that the automatic bye should be automatically to conference champions.
Right.
I think that's a little much for me.
Unfortunately, it's probably not going to change next year, because this year and next year are part of the same contract. It's after next year when the new contract starts. So, like, to get the playoff expanded to 12 teams this year, remember, like, all the conference commissioners, it had to be a unanimous vote to do this expansion. And to change it next year, it's going to have to be a unanimous vote. And, like, the Mountain West isn't going to vote to take away a bye from Boise State, right? Like, these, you're not going to get anything unanimous unless you're going to come up probably with, like an extra 30 million per conference or something like that. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, right? Is more money at the end of the day. So it's probably not going to change next year, but they still haven't put together what the format is going to be for the year after
when they when they up it. Yeah.
Right. They've got to get all that all figured out. Is it going to expand again? Like, is it going to go to 14? Do they take away some of these buys? It'll be interesting because, part of it, I don't want to say it's the Notre Dame clause, but that was definitely with Jack Swarbrick in that room working out the detail, like the finer points of this whole deal. Like, that was one of the things that was considered. Well, if Notre Dame wants to be a part of this, what's the concession? Well, the concession was, okay, Notre Dame doesn't have to play that extra game in a conference championship. So their concession is the best they can ever be is a 5 seed. And we found out pretty quickly, I don't know, like, how many models they ran when they were, looking at this different stuff. Like, I definitely, and I think you're probably the same, but, like, personally didn't realize that Notre Dame could still be, like, ranked number 5, but be pushed down to where they are, like, in danger of being pushed all the way down to 8 potentially. Based on these other conference champions.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Obviously, I mean, I don't want to make it as simple because I think it'll be a year-to-year thing. I don't want to make it as simple as this, but, like, as long as Notre Dame is hosting, I'm fairly happy. But at the same time, that one, because, like, if this was the old school 14 play, like, Notre Dame probably would have been 3rd. You know what I mean? They probably would have been ranked 3rd. And they got bumped all the way down to 7, and that seems a little iffy to me, to be honest with you. So, look, I'm happy with their path. In this particular year, I think it's a very doable path for Notre Dame. They're going to have to play their best football, obviously. I think they need to kind of figure about who gets the buys and what that looks like. But you're right. It's probably not going to change next year. But I would also say I don't think anybody would have predicted the way that it finished out, right? I don't think anybody would have predicted the Big 12 and, the Mountain West, the group of 5 team getting the bye.
Getting the buys.
I just...
Well,
and the ACC getting the 12 seed,
when this format was, when they came up with this format, it was still Power 5 conferences, and it wasn't the Pac-12 falling into the Pacific Ocean,
right?
and the best team, like the fact that you've got all these former Pac-12 teams in the college football playoff winning other conferences. No one would have anticipated that, like, just the way the whole thing shifted to, you had relatively balanced schedules in even in the SEC, in the Big Ten, and now everyone's done away with the divisions. Even teams within their own conferences are not playing the same schedule. Like from one team to the next, which is part of why you get Indiana. That's part of why you get SMU, because all these teams didn't play each other. So they came up with this format when it was the Power 5. Now it's the Power 4 with completely different looking conferences than they had 3 years ago or whatever it was when they came up with this stuff 4 years ago. So
yeah, it's just, look, I still think the 12-team playoff is better than the 4. It made the last month of the season riveting. It did. It made it riveting. Now, there's always going to be complainers who didn't get in. That's going to happen no matter how many teams you have in the playoff. That's always going to happen. And the reality is there's 5-ish teams that can realistically win a national championship this year. And so what that means is there's 7 in the playoff that don't. And we just lost 4 of them. You know what I mean? So
two of the legit contenders are going to play each other now in the second round in a rematch of a 1-point game.
Agreed.
In the regular season.
Yeah. So I think in a 12-team playoff, the cream's going to rise to the top. You know what I mean? There may be an upset here or an upset there, but once you get to like the Final Four, especially the championship, you've got 2 really good teams at that point. Right. It's very difficult. It's just not like basketball, right? Where a Cinderella can kind of make a run. I don't see that happening in football.
But look, because there's also going to be this conversation from both the Big Ten and the SEC, because remember, like there was already talk about how when this next contract comes along, they want guarantees of how many slots they're going to get. Like they want like 4 teams so if you're going to guarantee the top 4 from whatever conference, you're not going to solve any problems. Like you still have to figure out a way to base this more on merit than just, like automatic guarantees based on winning something like a conference championship game that really at the end of the day doesn't mean that much. It only means something because you're getting a bunch of money for playing these games, So like that's going to be part of it as well. Do the conferences ultimately decide within the next however many years that's feasible? Are they just going to get rid of these conference championship games because it hurts them more than anything else? And that would, like especially from the Notre Dame perspective, that would level things out if these conferences do get rid of the conference championship games, and that puts Notre Dame back in play to be a team that can get a top 4 seed.
That's a good call. Like you said, look, the conference championships is a money grab. So I don't know if they're ever going to get rid of them. But I think from a competitive football standpoint, what's the what's the benefit of playing in the conference championship game? I think most teams would be like, look, we're out. Like we're cool with it. We don't really want to be a part of it because it could only hurt us, really.
Right.
Especially if they take away the automatic bye.
Yes.
Yes. So that's a really good point. But I think it's something that you realistically need to look at, especially from a conference, like as a conference president outside of the money grab of a conference championship game, and they want to get as many teams in as they possibly can. You're better off not having a conference championship. You're better off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think?
The question is simply going to come down to, can they replace the revenue that each conference is making from those by expanding the playoff? Because that's what's ultimately probably, going to have to happen. Is they're going to have to expand the playoff to at least 14 teams and replace, and it's going to be a pool of conference championship money, because the SEC obviously has its revenue. The ACC, they all have a different revenue coming from their conference championship game. The SEC is the biggest moneymaker, but that's what it's going to come down to, is how those conferences replace that revenue by getting rid of those championship games with expansion of the playoff. But again, part of that also directly relates to how many teams from your conference you get in, because each team means more guaranteed revenue.
100%.
So
the conference has screwed themselves by getting so big. That's really what it comes down to, because at the end of the day, do we look, do we think IU is going to make is 11-1 if the conference is smaller? No, because they're going to have to play better teams.
Look, and that's why I also don't feel sorry for the SEC for whatever they think they deserve. Like the whole Herb Street comments about, it's not what, deserve and, all this different stuff. Like, I don't feel sorry for the SEC because going back to what I said at the beginning of the show, nobody made you expand your conference and add all these teams. Nobody made you pillage the Big 12. Nobody made you, nobody made the Big 10 pillage the Pac-12. Nobody made you guys do all this stuff, So like, I don't feel sorry for these 3-loss SEC teams getting left out for a 1-loss Indiana team, regardless of how deserving everybody thinks they are not, because of the fact that they lost a lopsided game, because nobody made you expand to begin with. So, and that's why, that's why your teams have more losses. Now, that's part of why your teams have more losses, because you expanded your conference and completely dissolved another Power 5 conference.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. Completely agree with that. I got one for you.
Okay.
So this one came to me as I was watching the press conference today, and it just reminded me of what happens once a team like Notre Dame, I'm obviously speaking about Notre Dame here because that's the team that I follow. What happens when national people start to descend on these press conferences and ask questions and
the Zooms?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, the question about how this game is going to be like the 1981 game.
That was not a national person. That was someone here in town.
Was it really?
On one of your local TV stations.
Lord, I didn't recognize the voice. Okay. Well, like those kinds of questions in this moment are just dumb. They're just dumb. I'm so like, what are you doing? Why are you asking Marcus Freeman to talk about a game that happened before he was born?
I know.
Like, he didn't watch the film on that game. Like,
what kind of impact does the Herschel Walker Georgia Notre Dame Sugar Bowl have on this game?
What story are you doing that you need a quote from Marcus Freeman about the 1981 game with Georgia and Notre Dame? Like, what story are you working on? Like, wow, man. Like those kinds of questions. And he's going to get more because there's going to be another press conference, obviously, at the end of the week. And he's going to have to answer questions. And they're just.
Well, they're at least. I don't think he has another one because we're going to get to talk to some players and the coordinators.
Is that what it is on Thursday? Okay.
But I think he'll probably, he'll obviously have another press conference once he gets down to New Orleans. And you're going to have even more national people around at that point. Like, I felt like in the post game, for as many like national people as around, like the post game stuff, went pretty well. Today was some different angles than we're used to. That's for sure.
It's the curmudgeon in me. It's the whole stupid questions. It's the loaded press box where every time I had to get up, I had to bump into you and bump into Brian. There was no room to move around. Like, I didn't like it, man.
Vince, you got your rally towel.
I did. It's in my bag right here.
Is it?
I'm gonna hang it up in my office. I hate rally towels. I'm gonna hang it up.
I was pleased when I walked up to our chairs and there were rally towels hanging off the chairs in the press box. I was like, well, Vince is going to be happy. He got something for free today. So
I heard some complaints from people in the stands because they didn't have the rally towels on the seats. They were like handing them out of boxes, like down in the concourse. And so a lot of people didn't get them.
So you'd rather have a frozen. So they didn't get them because.
So you know what I mean? You had to know to go get them.
Yeah.
And people didn't know, and then it would run out in some places, but they'd have a ton of boxes of them in other places. And so not everybody was able to get one, and people were kind of scrounging, from what I understand. So I don't think that was handled very well, but I'm still a non-rally towel guy, but it's a night like in game. Like, I think it's stupid, but keepsake wise, I'm going to, put it up on my bulletin board in my office. That's cool
for sure.
Like I kept my credential and I kept the rally towel, and I was disappointed. No programs. There were no programs up in the press box for us. I would have kept that too.
That's true. I was looking for. I usually don't look forward to the program, but I thought the program would be nice to have years from now,
right?
For the first playoff game.
That's my point exactly.
I've got 2 rally towels. So
Well, there you go. There you go.
and I've got your binoculars. You left your binoculars. In the press
Thank you for
box.
picking those up, by the way.
Yes.
Appreciate you. I'm going to get those from you before I leave.
They're in my. That's true. That's true. I think Joe was asking. Vince is going to the Sugar Bowl. Are you alone? Is it just you?
Well, me and my wife, but she's not going to the game. So yes, It's just me from IB. So
okay.
I'm it. I'm the lone because you got women's basketball, and Brian and I talked about it, and so we kind of worked out, if Notre Dame keeps winning, who's going to go to what, that kind of thing. So I'm going, baby. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Never been to New Orleans before.
I've been there once. I've driven in proximity to the Dome, but I've never been in the Dome. So
yeah, I'm excited about it. I was looking at some pictures today, and of course it's an indoor stadium, so it's an open air, press box kind of. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Joyce Center press box. You know what I mean? It's just kind of up a little bit, and everybody's in that kind of a deal. But hey, whatever, man.
I'll be curious to get your report next week.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be complaining about something.
Sure you will.
No doubt about it.
You and Dabo Sweeney.
I didn't get a parking pass, so I got to take the shuttle.
Oh boy.
Somebody else
already got denied the parking pass.
Yeah,
huh?
like immediately.
Man,
immediately.
I remember I took the shuttle when we went to the when I went to the BCS championship game, and I mean it was a little bit of a drive from the hotel, but it was still the only problem was at the end of the night trying to get back to the hotel. The shuttle.
That's what I'm worried about.
We stood out there for a long time waiting for the bus to get back to the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it all goes. And the other thing was the last bowl game I was at, I didn't stay in the media hotel. So it was more driving and things like that. And so I was nervous, but I am staying in the media hotel this time, so I can take the shuttle. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, no parking pass. What am I supposed to do? But staying in the media hotel, so it should work out pretty well. I'm excited about that. No driving to press conferences and things. So that'll be good.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to continue with a couple more grievances.
Bring it
here.
Bring it.
Festivus. I'm like Dabo Sweeney.
Ooh.
Apparently has never been a fan. He was not a fan of expanding to 12 teams.
Interesting.
And even though like his team is the biggest beneficiary of the expanded 12 team by winning the ACC and getting an automatic bid, he still doesn't like it because he says it makes this new format makes college football just like the NFL, basically. And I completely disagree with that. It is not like the NFL because, you have more teams still in college football. In the NFL, you still only have 32 teams, and you have a much greater percentage of teams that are getting in. Like percentage-wise, you still have a very small fraction of college teams who are actually making it in the playoffs. Two, the NFL plays much more balanced schedules than what colleges are playing, and it's pretty cut and dry. That based on records, and obviously in college there's still a lot more subjectivity involved, which is why there's all this complaining that we had this weekend. So I think that it is not like the NFL at all. There are more teams, but I still think that there is a very distinct difference between, just the whole formats and the way they do things. So no, Dabo, no,
it's not even close. Look, there's 130 plus teams in college football and only 12 make it into the postseason. I mean, that's, or at least into the playoff, excuse me. I mean, obviously bowl games are the postseason, but the playoffs only has 12 teams. Like that percentage is really low. I mean, that's what it's about 10%. Whereas in the NFL, it's like 30% or so to the teams that make it in, right? It's
not
about
even 10%. It's like very low. Yeah.
I mean, so like, yeah, it's not even close to the same. I mean, not even close. So it's and they only have 2 buys in the NFL, I do believe, right? The 2 top seeds are the ones that get the buys, and all games are played at home stadiums until you get to the Super Bowl. So no, this is nothing like that. Nothing. And I tend to agree with Dabo on a lot of things. Not this time. Sorry, buddy. I like the kind of the all shucks Dabo. Like I kind of dig him. I like him. Let's have pizza on Selection Sunday. Let's just do our thing.
Right.
I think some of his like little making the shirts about everybody on the other bus or whatever. I think some of that gets a little old, but I do like Dabo as a coach. This take is just not great in any way.
I agree. Great. Obviously, I mean, I came up with it, so I obviously agree.
This is very true.
I know that, one of your grievances was with the obnoxious Indiana fans. Do you want to expand on that?
I do want to expand on that. This is and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is a big one for me, and it's a very recency, grievance, obviously. But, and we're going to have obnoxious Georgia fans, but the difference between obnoxious Georgia fans and obnoxious IU fans is obnoxious Georgia fans have something to actually brag about. Like, they've been here before. They know what it takes to win. IU fans have no clue. They're like, whoa, we're in the playoff. We're just obviously really good, and you suck, and we're going to fight you. And like, they have no leg to stand on. Like, don't be obnoxious. Be happy that you're here, man. Be happy that you're here. You got to be in the playoff for one day, and you blew it. You blew it. You blew it, and you're probably not going to have an opportunity to be back anytime soon. So you should have soaked it up. You should have been happy to be there, and you weren't.
Trash talking.
You just pissed everybody off is what you did, led by your head coach. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised because they're all taking on the identity of their head coach. But like, I said it at the end of the post-game show, and I'll say it here as well. IU fan, all my friends who are IU fans, you know what? You enjoy basketball season. We're going to keep talking about football.
You're going to be grumbling about basketball season too.
Well,
for that matter.
The fact that Notre Dame's basketball team without their best player is probably still better than IU. I mean, just saying.
Yeah.
But, enjoy the candy stripe. That's the other thing. Can we talk about the fact that
I didn't see as many candy cane pants as I thought I would, but I definitely saw some.
There was a good amount in my opinion, but like the fact that this is the funny part to me. IU fans don't even understand what it's like to cheer for a football team this late in the year because they're wearing basketball stuff to a football game. There's no candy stripes on the football team, guys.
That's right.
This is a basketball thing. And what do we wear to the game? What do we wear? Candy stripes. Yeah, let's pretend it's a basketball game. Like, come on, man. Come on.
Did you hear from any of those Indiana fans who you were here, today? I guess you were on Christmas break. So
I'm on Christmas break, but no. The answer is no. At all. No.
I think it's hilarious.
No. They kind of dropped off the face of the earth from social media.
I think it's fun that for maybe the first time ever, Notre Dame and Purdue fans had something to unite about.
It's true. It's true. One of my good friends is a Purdue alum, and he loves to root against Notre Dame. But in this particular case, he was rooting for the Irish. His hatred for IU is much, much greater than his hatred for Notre Dame, which I appreciated.
It's like
that was a Festivus miracle right there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Festivus miracle. It's like no bagel. If you're familiar with the episode of The Strike is what the episode is actually
The Strike.
called.
That's right.
So I just want to throw out like people who doubted Rylie Leonard, here we are, baby. Here we are.
It's a good
on
one.
To the quarterfinals. All this, Rylie Leonard ain't the guy who can get it done, and he's not a good enough passer. That started to finally die a little bit in November, as this offense just continued to take off. But like, I think this is a guy who just at some point, he's talked about it, obviously, just like sometimes you got to say, what the freak, right? Like we obviously can't say, like the actual, he's, just like risky business, sometimes you just got to say, what the hell, what the F, whatever it is that you want to say. And you just kind of got to go for it. And like, that's what Rylie Leonard has done. And you don't have to be a perfect passer to be a really good college quarterback. Scoring touchdowns is really all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And like this offense took off when he, like you could just see it clicking
Yes.
from him. And he's still, again, like he's not going to be the guy who's, just going to go out there and pick apart a defense. But when you have to account for Riley Leonard and whichever of those explosive running backs, Love or Price, are in the backfield, and again, like, that's why I felt like it was only one play.
Yeah.
But that Jeremiah Love touchdown run, all 98 yards of it, set the tone for the rest of the night, because that's all Indiana was focused on for the rest of the night, was making sure they weren't going to give up another one of those plays. And it just allowed Riley Leonard to go out there and operate the offense, and they basically had their way with Indiana for the rest of the night.
Love that. Love it, because it's very true. I mean, just because he does it in a different way, an unconventional way, right? People think that he's a horrible quarterback, or thought, I should say, and they wasn't getting a whole lot of respect going into the playoff either. I mean, he was ranked in the bottom half of the quarterbacks that were in the playoff, which I think was grossly misjudged, frankly, because he was the X factor in this game, and they went as he went offensively. And look, I give all the flowers, obviously, to Jeremiah Love when he was able to do, but Riley Leonard kept those drives moving and kept this offense moving and scoring those points. So I'm with you on that one for sure.
Yeah, Brody said he didn't have a great passing game, 72%. So like your idea of what's great, I guess, I don't know, but he said he was pressured on 50% of his drop backs. The offensive line had I didn't think that they had a bad game, but again, like, it's his mobility erases, some things up front, and
exactly
the line was definitely different after
Rocco went out.
The Rocco injury. Yeah.
Yep.
It was different.
Yep.
So
no doubt.
Hey, and as Joe said, what about Faison? Like, big time. And you needed a performance like that from one of the Notre Dame receivers. That was probably the best performance by a Notre Dame receiver. The deep ball from Riley Leonard to Faison on that 44-yard pass was obviously big. But I mean, just for them to show that is a possibility as well going into a game like Georgia, that's big.
Right.
That's big.
Yep. Yeah, and the O-line didn't have a great game. Nobody's saying that they did. Knapp had an amazing block on the 98-yard run. Didn't have a great game after that.
Against one of the best defensive linemen in the Big Ten.
Exactly. He lost a lot of battles against him, but guess what? He won the ones that mattered. I mean, that's all that I care about. And look, the offensive line as a whole didn't do great once Rocco got injured. That's what happens when 1/5 of your unit goes down. I mean, that's what happens. So, I'm not giving them a pass. They played well enough. They didn't play great. They played well enough.
Since this is Festivus and the feats of strength and all, how about Jeremiah? Jeremiah Love showed the speed obviously on the 98-yarder, but how about that stiff arm?
Oh man,
Man,
stiff arm was beautiful. It was. That stiff arm was beautiful.
Thing of beauty.
That was great.
I feel like I need to have an issue with Ryan Day. Even though he won this weekend, it just feels like you don't need a reason to file grievance against Ryan Day, right? Again, he won. Okay, you did your thing,
right? Man,
I tell you what, though, for that stadium to be 44% or whatever it was,
is that what it ended up being?
Oh, yeah, that's what they were saying. Wow. Over 40%.
That's
orange. And I guess like Columbus itself, there was just orange everywhere around town.
Wow.
Maybe it saved his job. I don't know. But fans, I'll be curious to see what this turnout is out there to the Rose Bowl now for this Oregon game.
That's a bit more of a hike. It's a drive from Tennessee to, Ohio to Columbus. That's a hike to the Rose Bowl. Now that they're going to be in all these neutral sites and and all that, I am very curious to see how everybody travels and what that looks like. And that is going to be interesting because there was some massive home field advantage, across. I mean, granted, 44%, but it was still home field advantage for Ohio State. You know what I mean? So,
sorry, my elbow is locking up here. I'm trying
to pop your shoulder out, or what?
Stretch it out
over there.
Chief Brody was just talking about the Jeremiah Love hurdle for the loss. That was an interesting play. It's like,
that was ugly.
Still made the hurdle. but
he did make the hurdle, but
you
there was
can't
like 3
hurdle
guys
8
waiting for
guys.
him. Yeah, that was
That's right.
it was not great. It was not great.
G Baby
Stay
Brian
tuned.
will be doing a live show at 8:00 tonight, and he is going to get into the Malachi Fields sighting. He's going to break that down for you. So I
Absolutely.
think it's another nice commitment for Notre Dame, veteran wide receiver, a guy with some size. But,
Yeah, no doubt.
Brian will be breaking it down a little bit more
No doubt.
at 8.
I
Vince-
like your Go ahead.
Go-
I said I like the last one. The last one's really good that you had written down.
Okay, I was going to say, do you have any more grievances?
Well,
I'm
I was
surprised that like people in the chat haven't thrown more of their own grievances.
I was going to go
But-
down I was going to go down a couple of other paths, but I don't know that it's necessary. I like where we've kind of been sticking kind of sport specific.
Okay.
Tonight. I can, but I don't know that we need to. How about that? The next
Okay.
one is a good one though.
So my last one tonight, people who freak out on social media
Oh my god.
from play to play, like in the moment, it's like, oh, we gave up a 15-yard pass. This defense is horrible. Like,
Oh my god.
I just put the drink down,
Yeah.
social media away.
Just put your phone
like-
down, man.
Just like put the phone down for a little while and just watch the game and let it play out. Like, it's like the game, like how many. The game is not over in the first quarter, right?
Right. Exactly. Look,
And there's just so much of this.
here's the deal. There's a reason that I don't get on the boards during games. I can't do it. Like, I love everybody that's on the board. You're all amazing people.
Yes.
But the angst that is just shed on the message board during the game.
Is that the
it's
true
just-
BK PTSD? Like, is
Oh
that
my
what that is?
God. I think that's just Notre Dame PTSD. Like, it's not just BK. It is above and beyond all of that. You know what I mean? It's just, you're right. From play to play, like if there's one negative play that happens, there'd be like instantly 2 pages.
We've got the worst defense in the world. How is this
instantly.
happening?
Instantly 2 pages added, to the whole thing.
And by
Like,
the way, like the whole, again, so much freak out at the end of the game. They're up 20-3, obviously. And, there's only so much time left.
right?
And so you're obviously going to be playing prevent defense. And the amount of people who like had, just like you would have thought were stroking out because Notre Dame gave up a couple of late touchdowns at
Right.
the end of the game. To me, like and Al Golden talked about it, they obviously, changed the way they were doing things and the kind of looks that they were giving them. It's like Jack Morris. Do you remember Jack Morris, the pitcher, Detroit Tigers?
Oh, yeah.
Where he started out, pitched, like 10 innings in Game 7 of the 1991 World Series for the Minnesota Twins.
Yep.
Jack Morris had an ERA in the 4s for most of his career because he came from an era where, like, if you were a starting pitcher, your job was to go out there and, suck up at least 7 innings.
Oh, you eat innings.
if not 9.
Yeah.
And like Jack Morris was not afraid if he was ahead of giving up a couple runs late in the game. Like he pitched to the scoreboard,
Mhm.
and his job was just to go out there and give you, the most innings that you could and just grind out innings and find ways, like sometimes you're going to win those games. Sometimes you're going to lose that game, but he pitched to the scoreboard. He wasn't concerned about giving up a couple of runs here or there, like, because, like the big picture, right? So like
Hey,
and
listen.
that's what Al Golden, was doing
Yep.
at the end of the game the
Yep.
other night. He wasn't concerned about giving up a few yards, giving up a couple touchdowns, because the math showed that Notre Dame was going to win that game.
Correct.
The game was won for all intents and purposes.
Yep.
So like
Yep.
freaking out because they give up a couple of touchdowns at the end of the game. Like, come on. Like style points
Right.
mean 0 at this point.
At this point in the season, yeah,
All that
absolutely. Look,
matters is you walk off the field with a win.
I hated those garbage time touchdowns during the regular season. Hated them. I wasn't a huge fan of them in the game on Friday as I'm walking to the car, because we left a little bit early, try to get home, start the show, that kind of a thing. And that's when they scored those 2 touchdowns. It's like, oh, are you serious? Like onside kick too? Like, okay. But I was never worried about Notre Dame losing that game. And at the end of the day, for 4 games, I don't care what it looks like. I don't. And anybody that says they do care, if Notre Dame ends up winning 4 games in a row here in the postseason, they're going to be national champions. Okay. If you care how that happens, then you got way too much to worry about in your life. Like I just want them to win, man. Like I don't care, because on the t-shirt that says national championship, it doesn't say, and they only won by a little bit.
Right.
Like I don't care.
One more point is all you need.
It doesn't matter, man.
One more point is all you need.
Wins, baby. Get me the W's. It does not matter how ugly it looks. And honestly, Sean, the uglier it looks, the more money we make, because people be complaining about it. So get those W's. It's all that matters.
So someone just said that Brian has posted 8:30 start time.
I did check the green room, as they say, and it is posted for 8:30.
Okay, he told me 8, so I was saying 8.
Yep.
8:30 is apparently when it's going to start, but they will cover the Malachi Fields. Like everything about the Virginia wide receiver in there and a lot more, I believe. So this is going to be our only show before Christmas.
This is true.
Still, because of like the schedule and stuff like that, maybe something that we'll have like this show specifically later in the week. Obviously, Brian will be doing some shows later in the week, but there's a lot of stuff like, let's be honest. When Notre Dame won, we had no idea what the media schedule was going to look like. Like we didn't even know there was going to be a press conference today until like they didn't announce any of that until after they won, so like there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're going to kind of piece it all together, but at least for the next couple of days, no shows. So,
yep, absolutely. So everybody needs to enjoy their Christmas. Have a great time. Remember to air your grievances tonight.
Yes.
When you sit down at the dinner table, if you haven't done that already, it needs to happen. Air those grievances. We did.
Go get your aluminum pole.
That's right. I plan on some feats of strength tonight when my kid gets home. I got to still show him who's boss. Okay. I watched that episode of Seinfeld, by the way, today. And
I've got to watch it once I'm done here.
It's freaking amazing. Come on and pin your father. It's not over till you pin your father. That's great. Stop crying and get over here.
It's a Festivus miracle.
Oh, that's great. Oh, it's so funny. Father David has no faith in me whatsoever.
Father David has $50 on Dylan.
It's fair. The kid's very strong. I don't know what else to say. Like he's very strong, but it is what it is. Yep. Had a great talk with the head coach today, though. So
nice.
I think we're getting closer to a commitment.
All right.
I'm getting excited.
Looking forward to that.
So
we'll have to talk about it.
That's right, man. Well, there's talk of a commitment show. So we'll see what happens.
Excellent. All right. Well, everybody have a great Christmas. Appreciate you being here tonight. Appreciate you putting up with our airing of grievances for Festivus for the rest of us.
So great.
Hit the like button before you leave. And we will talk to you later at some point. Notre Dame moving on in the college football playoff. And that's, that's something we don't have to grieve about, right? Like, it's kind of cool. Like, I've lost track of how many times that I've driven to Notre Dame in the last couple of weeks with everything extra.
I know, right?
But we're all excited about it because
we get a practice. We get to go see a practice on Saturday. I'm kind of pumped for that.
That's right.
I'm excited.
All right. Have a great Christmas. And we'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Merry Christmas, everybody.